welcome to Finextra. I'm Thea George and I'm here with Edward Budd from Deutsche Bank. We're at EBA Day 2016 in Milan and we're talking about blockchain. Edward, thank you for joining me.
Hello.
So how far has blockchain progressed into the mainstream in 2016 and has its journey reflected your expectations?
So in 2016 it's certainly come to the fore. Across cash trade and securities we hear about it a huge amount, particularly from all the use cases. I see that most as the 5 to 10 year potential across the market and business structure. What's also broadened out in 2016, which I think brings it more into the mainstream, is the involvement of other critical stakeholders in the financial markets. Regulators, central banks, market infrastructure providers, all important to how we actually practically take this into production. And that practical piece is an important part of my expectation, where we move from the lab into the practicalities of how we implement this in the real world. There's lots of good projects now doing that. I think the piece that is a little beyond my expectations for 2016 is how much momentum this is gathering outside of financial products, in government, in automotive, utilities, pharmaceuticals. And this ultimately may define the actual financial products that we're aiming to deliver to our customers.
So do you think a consensus is emerging about where in financial services blockchain can be best applied?
Well, there are certainly very credible use cases across almost all transaction banking lines. I think the key question for me though is rather how it will be applied and what's needed. Is it going to be private? Is it going to be public? What type of shared ledger we need? Just all types of contracts that we need to put in place. How much can a smart contract really do? So those are the questions on how we implement this rather than what it will be applied to. I certainly think there's a growing consensus it needs to be applied to more simple parts, simple steps, so that we start to move forward in a practical sense.
So what about the standards and the technology? Is the industry developing what's needed there fast enough? Might more need to be done?
It's certainly a critical topic for us collectively, and collaboration here is key. Some great industry initiatives, both within commercial consortiums, traditional industry bodies, that are making sure that standards are explicitly part of the journey, and even some open source projects, which is a first for this area. But what I'm also worried about is making sure that we get the full opportunity of this innovation. We don't stifle it before we actually have it fully emerging. What will help us here is to focus on the areas that we really need standard approaches. For example, how do we transfer assets between ledgers, get some interoperability to enable processes like delivery versus payment? Or, and probably most importantly, how do we minimize the cost of adoption? How do we make sure this is inclusive by setting standards around data ramps on and off of ledgers? But some of these can only be developed at the speed with which the practical implementations are coming along.
Edward, this has been great. Many thanks again.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.